Hello again, everybody. Welcome into this series of interviews that we are doing with candidates running for the town council in Harpers Ferry. My name is Colin McGuire. Is this Zachary? Is it Zach? Which is it?
Zach is fine. Yeah, just Zach.
Okay. So Zach, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. Good. It's great. It's good to be here. Thanks for doing this. It's good to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. I love your wallpaper, I think.
Yep. This was my childhood bedroom growing up, actually, and it's turned into the office for remote work during COVID. So
What do you
it's
do?
I work for Howard University in DC and NASA Goddard Space Flight Center over in Greenbelt, Maryland. So I'm a research scientist. My background's in geology, so I have a degree in Earth science and actually lunar geology. And I work with a team that studies both field geology and preparing handheld tools that the astronauts might take back to the moon in a few years. So it's a lot of fun.
Holy smokes! I just write graduation stories. With you have a hell of a wow. You have a hell of a life, I guess. Why on earth? Then that bleeds into the first question: is why do you want to be on town council?
Well, okay, so I grew up here. I'm from Harpers Ferry. I was actually born here. So till I was 18, I lived right here in town, and then I did go away for college and then grad school. But I moved back a couple years ago, and I feel like I don't know. It's a good time, especially now since everybody has to kind of work remotely, at least in my field. It looks like we're going to be still doing this remote work on through even after the pandemic's over. So I have a good chance to kind of be back home, work from home, and also participate a little more in the community. It's something I've kind of wanted to do for years, but I never really had the chance until just now.
Wow. So you wanted to do it for years. Why? What do you? What are the things you want to accomplish?
Well, it's kind of complex. So I mean, I grew up here, and I actually had a couple of chances to sort of always, attend town council meetings as a kid, and then a couple of chances to like chat with the town council. At one point in, I think it was 8th grade, I did a West Virginia state social studies fair project about a bit of the town history. And by the end of it, I was able to turn one of my posters into an interpretive marker up by a town gazebo. And I worked with the town council to get funding for that, even while I was still in high school. And I don't know, it was neat. It was a neat chance to be a part of the community, to turn some of my work into something that other people could appreciate. And I feel like I could still kind of do that. I mean, on one level, I'm inspired by other young folks who are getting into politics now. I mean, not that this is any big scale politics; it's just local stuff. But I feel like it's good to have a younger perspective, but also at the same time, someone who's been in town for close to, or has like a 30-year town memory of different events that have happened. So like I can kind of bring that youthful perspective, but also that local immediate history.
So I was going to say, you kind of alluded to it. Are you 30 years old, 29?
Yeah,
something?
30. Yeah,
30?
I just turned 30 in March. So
Oh.
yeah, I could say safely 25 years of town history. I don't think the first few years I wasn't taking notes, but I was definitely here.
Wow. So this is really interesting. As we're taping this will be out next week. But yesterday was the Charlestown elections. Charlestown held their city council and mayor races, and there was a candidate who was fairly young who won. And when I interviewed her for one of these, we did talk about the youth stuff. That sort of perspective. What do you think is the biggest? I guess the biggest component, the biggest positive for you being young and trying to be involved in town politics, for lack of a better phrase. But what's also, do you see a downfall at all too? Do you see the negatives as well as the positives?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, congrats to Liz. Liz Ricketts is the candidate you mentioned. We actually went to high school together. We were in the same graduating class. So It's neat to see a few Jefferson High kids getting involved. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting. A lot of I would be the youngest person elected to town council in Harpers Ferry in many years, at least. I don't know when the last time someone this young was elected, and I feel like you can bridge a gap to things like social media, things like easier ways to communicate with the general public, and also be a little bit more in touch with some of the social movements that are happening now, even on a grander scale. I mean, the cliche is that everything starts local, so just to have someone who's a little bit more in touch with Black Lives Matter, some of the, especially the national politics, the way things went over the last 4 years were insane. And I feel like it's a lot of younger people who are leading the charge to bring back a sense of like focus of reasonableness to all different levels. So in terms of downsides, I don't know. I mean, some people might think I'm inexperienced, but again, I think I have the longest town history of any of the people running, ironically, in this election. And I have experience. When I was in grad school, I was on our local graduate student council for a couple years, which ran through Robert's rules and parliamentary procedure and all that. So I'm pretty well versed in town history and the way things go. So I don't see it as a negative. I see it as a fresh perspective, and generally positive.
Have you been out campaigning? What's the sense of, how do you think this is going to go? Do you think you have a good chance?
I hope so. So I had been out, just chatting with neighbors and things. It's weird. It feels like I was likening it to when I was little, we would go trick or treating every Halloween and sort of knock on doors looking for candy. And now I'm out there seeing if people would vote for me. So it's a weird, similarity. But yeah, it seems like in town there's a bunch of support. I don't know for sure. So I'm a scientist by training. So the election itself is an interesting data point just to see, no matter how things go, it'll be very interesting to see who votes for who and what the results are.
Now, there are issues with people in Harpers Ferry. Harpers Ferry is divided, or at least somewhat, and it has been, in part due to the hotel and the arrival of the hotel and the council and the votes, the count the votes thing. And I'm trying to get a sense of where you stood on all of this. So did you support the hotel to begin with? Where do you stand on it now?
So to begin with, I mean, I go back to 2009 when the Swan investors first approached, the town. We had our very first meeting up at the Mather Training Center here, and I was still in high school. And we went everybody was excited. It was, a good moment for the community, and that's kind of dragged on, 10 plus years now through different levels. And so I've always supported the idea of a reestablished hotel up there. I feel like it's kind of sad that the structure's, fallen to the state that it's in, and it's always been a highlight, or at least it was a highlight of the town when I was younger, for people to go up and have Mother's Day brunch up there or stay and get to know the town. Where I think the division now stands is just how much of a footprint the redeveloped hotel will have on the town, and especially the local neighborhood up on what we call Magazine Hill or East Ridge Street over there. And so that's where I think I stand apart from a lot of the other candidates running, in that I think there should be some pretty strong limits. We have what's zoned right now as a residential neighborhood. And to be fair, the Swan Investment Group has purchased a lot of the properties which have traditionally been residential homes. And there's been, different layers. At one point, we had a zoning overlay district that was established that would allow commercial uses of these residential properties up to a certain point. And now the group has just applied for what they call a West Virginia Tourism Development District, or TDD, which would even further expand the reach of what you could do commercially, even though it's zoned locally as residential. So I don't know. I have some concerns about historical preservation and just keeping the neighborhoods residential but historically preserved. Just placing. So I feel like when it comes down to it, to be as candid as possible, I mean, the Swan Group's an investment group, so they, it's good for them. They have to make the decisions that will make them the most, profit in the end. Which again, that no one can fault them for that. That's the nature of what their group is. But we, as town citizens, and then hopefully members of the town council, have a responsibility to be the boundary to. It's good that we promote the economic development, but we cannot sacrifice the historical preservation that Harpers Ferry is known for. And I feel like we have to kind of contain the level to which we allow that much change up on that hill.
What did you think of the count the votes with all of that? Did you think they should have been counted right away? Did you have any opinion on that?
I find it a strange situation, and I think it's actually, it is or was West Virginia state law that the current town council served as the board of canvassers for verifying votes, especially if you're an incumbent running for re-election. So I don't have strong opinions on it. I mean, I know that it worked out through the courts. So yeah, you trust the justice system. Everything did sort itself out in the end. Um, I don't think we're going to have any issues. I think that everybody. I mean, there were some concerns about different residents' addresses and things not being recorded properly in the voter registration. I think that's all been sorted out. So moving forward, that won't be an issue. And it's good that it did get sorted out in the end. But yeah, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I don't know. It worked out in the end. Yeah.
Well, I bring up those two issues now because those have been very divisive issues in town. And one thing I've asked everybody so far is how could you help bring everybody back together? Have you thought about how maybe a town council could actually unite everybody?
Yeah. So and I think there was a forum a couple weeks ago with the NAACP of Jefferson County, and I feel like all of the candidates are very strong candidates, and we all have, we agree on 90% of the issues. It's just these last 10% that cause some division, and I feel like that regardless of how things turn out with the hotel or the tourism overlay district, there's a lot of other projects in town that we're going to focus on as the next town council moves in and over the next few years. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to bring people together on other issues that are not like this. This one's been a flashpoint for so long that there's other things like, there's development of the High Street project downtown. There's a chance to develop new trails and new walking tours throughout town. A couple of the candidates had great ideas about community gardens and farmers markets, all these little events that I feel like could start to stitch the community back together. We used to have, the series of concerts. Music on the Ridge was one event. The Park Service hosted a jazz festival over at Storer College. All of these things, just more fun recreational things, especially as we're coming out of a year plus of pandemic lockdown. I feel like it's a chance to sort of have a rebirth of a sense of community. So all small projects, but with a big impact.
What do you think is the biggest issue that the town faces? Is it infrastructure? I've heard a lot about sidewalks. I've heard a lot about just sort of things that a lot of people might not necessarily consider all the time, but they are actually very substantial things in the fabric of Harpers Ferry. What to you is the biggest issue confronting everybody going forward?
That's a good question. And unfortunately, at least right now, if you ask me this question in a few months, maybe a year, it'll probably change. Right now, I think it's still going to be the hotel and the tourism overlay district, because it has the chance to reshape a significant portion of a residential neighborhood in town, and it will set the stage for what our vision of Harpers Ferry will be in the future. Will it be, continue to be a historical residential town that supports tourism, or will it become more of a tourism centric, almost resort like town that has its history? And I think those are subtle differences, but there's a lot at play of how because there's a lot of rules that have been put in place, town ordinances, historical preservation laws that have worked to keep Harpers Ferry this unique space. It almost feels like you're stepping back into 1865 when you go downtown. And for me personally, it was amazing because even though I went away to college and then grad school, I could still come back and count on hometown to feel exactly the same as it was when I left. So I feel like the biggest change that we faced over the last decade or two is this development of a stronger tourism industry. Not that we don't have a strong one already. There's plenty of shops downtown, plenty of the park itself offers tons of trails and natural and history opportunities. But I feel like the core of what Harpers Ferry is could change depending on how much development we allow. We're geographically, physically limited by the two rivers. Like we can't expand physically or geographically, but we can. What faces us is the chance to, do we rezone things and allow more tourism and industry to step in, or do we try and maintain the historically residential area? And I fall on that second side, where we try and just keep it the slightly more quiet residential sections that are right up against the more tourism heavy downtown historical and natural spaces.
There are some that would argue that Harpers Ferry really kind of is a tourist town on some level. You guys get a lot of people coming in. You said you fell on the other side of that. Where would you sort of make up the money that you would lose from a tourism, if that makes sense? What would be the alternative?
Well, I don't. So yeah, this is the core of the argument. I don't know. It's a hypothetical gain or loss of funding since we haven't had a hotel for over a decade, and that area has always been residential. I feel like we over the last few years we've established much more public parking, which is a huge source of revenue for the town, and there's still taxes from the local businesses. I feel like we can maintain this level and still do everything we need to do as a community. It's the question that it's framing it of the hypothetical. Do we do this to gain more potential funding, which is contingent on, tourism industry, the level of participation you get from people in state and out of state, or do we kind of maintain this unique, historically preserved? Because I think the core of what brings people here is the history and the well preserved nature of the town. So I don't believe we should be changing that fundamental piece of town to go after this perceived potential additional revenue.
So you said that you've been following a lot of the town stuff throughout your life, really. I want to talk about the current council or the outgoing council, the outgoing administration from the mayor on down. What are some things that you think they've done that have been very good? They've been super successes, and what are some things that you would have liked to see them do differently?
That's a good question. Again, most of the stuff, there's a lot of things that don't get the public attention. Just managing the day-to-day business of the town, keeping up with. We have a big water project that's going on to revamp the entire water system in town. All of those things, town council, excellent job. They've been good. They're great members of the community. They know what they're doing. The issues, I hate to keep coming back to it because I feel like it is just one stop. But the hotel itself, and specifically very recently, they voted to sell what has been traditionally public street land. Both in town we have paved streets that have been developed, and then these things called paper streets, which were on the original map of Harpers Ferry, but never developed into paved usable streets, but they're still strips of public property. And so the current council did finally vote to sell Columbia Street in town, which is a paved street, and then a paper street that abuts onto that, as well as a portion of East Ridge paved street, and then another paper street to the hotel, which for years had been sort of the line in the sand of these are the dividing lines between where the residential sections of that neighborhood end, and then the more commercial oriented hotel would begin. And I feel like that, from a purely ethical perspective, it bothers me that publicly accessible land and public owned land would be sold to a private for-profit entity, given that Harpers Ferry is such a historically preserved town. Sorry, we live right next to the train station.
Oh,
There's
that's
a train
fine.
going by. It feels weird and almost counterintuitive to a lot of the preservation work that's gone on both in the town and the park over the last few decades. It just feels like a trend in the wrong direction to begin giving up public land versus trying to incorporate more land into the park or not into the town, but to keep it preserved within our jurisdiction. And yeah, that one doesn't necessarily sit right with me. Not that I would want to re-legislate anything if I got elected. That's what's done is done. I just feel like moving forward, we need to keep vigilant on how we interact with that entity, which now owns a significant number of properties in town. So it'll be interesting. No matter who gets elected, it's going to be an interesting next 2 to 10 years of town history.
Yeah. I've got one more serious question, then we'll have a couple fun questions to wrap things up. So hopefully you're up for some fun.
Of course.
And this is something I've asked a bunch of different people. If you don't come out victorious this time, would you consider running again? Since you're so young and you seem to be very passionate about Harpers Ferry, would you run in 2 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unless there's a ton of other people running and there's other people who are more qualified, then sure, I could step back. But there's also the chance to work on, we have tons of different committees and commissions in town that work on all different levels: planning, historical preservation, parks and rec. So there are opportunities to get involved no matter what. And I feel like this is my first foray into the waters, testing out how things go. And if they don't work out successfully the first time, there's tons of chances to get involved and volunteer. So I'll definitely be a part of town happenings no matter how it goes. So yeah.
Do you ever want to be mayor?
That's a big step from town council. I mean, it's a lot of work regardless. But it's interesting. And I think other people in other interviews have mentioned this, that some of these positions, while they're meant to be part-time and they're not fully paid or anything like that, they do require a lot of time investment, a lot of energy. And as a young professional who has a full-time job, I don't think I could practically represent the town as mayor well at this stage, because it takes way more time than I'd be able to commit. I mean, it would be in an ideal world, sure, maybe someday, but we'll see. There's plenty of time to worry about that.
All right, so here we go. Here's a couple lighter things to get out on. Over the course of the last year and some months, there's been a pandemic. And during that pandemic, a lot of people have taken time to really throw themselves at something, get obsessed with a television show or learn how to knit or something like that. Did you pick up any hobbies over the last year?
Yeah, actually. So it's funny you should mention that. I feel like in order to keep myself sane, kind of stay focused through especially the most lockdown parts of the pandemic, I tried picking up sort of a different hobby almost each month, or maybe every, I don't know, season, every few months. So last fall, I had the chance to actually lived up in New York for just a little while. I helped a friend move into a new house, and it was right on a lake. So I picked up canoeing quite a bit. I've done that before, but a bit more long distance, trying to average about 5 miles a day. So that was my big fall hobby. When it came to the winter, I built a computer for the first time. I do use computers on a daily basis, but I had never actually like gotten into how they worked or done any programming. So yeah, I built it's off screen now, but I built a physical computer, learned how that worked. And then into the spring, I picked up gardening. So planting a few seeds, getting almost completely different hobbies, but just a variety of things. So hopefully by the summer, we'll have some vegetables to eat, and then I'll have something else to pick up in a few months. Maybe it'll be learning how the town council works from the inside, and and going from there.
What did you plant? What vegetables did you plant?
I got a bunch of radishes because the internet said they were the fastest plants to grow. And my first time doing it, I knew I'd be a little impatient. So I went with the quickest vegetable. They should be ready to harvest in a week or so. I also have some zucchini, some peppers, all kinds of different vegetables out there. We'll see. I've never done it before, so I don't know if I've done it right, but if we're lucky, we'll have a salad soon.
That's true. What is your favorite movie?
I don't know. That's a tough question. Favorite movie. I feel like the answer everyone or a lot of people give is Star Wars. That's a huge one. I grew up watching all kinds of different science fiction, and that's sort of what pushed me towards a career in science itself. But yeah, Star Wars, the original trilogy, it's got to be one of the best.
Okay. If I'm gonna go out to dinner in Harpers Ferry, where would you recommend I go?
That's a hard one. I feel like a lot of restaurants here are more lunch focused. They're open during the day, especially on the weekend when we have a lot more tourists in town. So there's lot of lunch spots, but I don't have a ton of dinner spots. If you're in town for lunch or even breakfast, the Country Cafe, which is technically up in Bolivar, is one of my favorite restaurants of all time. And then downtown, getting ice cream from the Swiss Miss or any of the ice cream places downtown, you can't go wrong. Have a stroll around town with ice cream in the summer. It's like the classic thing to do. So yeah.
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
I would actually have to say coffee, which is interesting. I never tried it as a kid, but we did, especially when my grandparents came to town, we would get ice cream from the Swiss Miss, the coffee mill downtown. And I think there's a bit of nostalgia for the scent of the coffee grounds when we got ice cream, and it's sort of blended together now to be my favorite flavor is coffee.
That's something. Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. I actually have never had either.
You've never had either?
No, when I was young, I never got into carbonated beverages. So anything, I was always a juice or water type guy. I've never done soda.
How about beer or wine?
I've also not done too much of the alcohol. I would beer of the two, definitely
Okay.
beer. Not a fan of wine. Wine looks too much like fruit juice and then doesn't taste like it in the end. So I can't trust it.
So you don't like to drink either then. What do you like? What do you cook at all at home?
Yeah, as much as I can. Trying different recipes, especially now going online, gathering different recipes from all over and trying them.
What are some of your favorite things to cook?
For Mother's Day, we made a big paella with sausage and shrimp and peppers, and that's a fun one because it looks as good as it tastes. Like there's a lot of, by the end you have all the vegetables and meats kind of laid out across the top of the dish. So that's fun.
Good. Wow. Do you have a favorite side dish?
When now you have me thinking, if you go to the Country Cafe up in Oliver here, they have sour cream and chives seasoned French fries, which are the best French fries I've ever had. So I've traveled to a lot of different places, had a lot of different French fries, and I have not found ones that have topped the seasoned fries of the Country Cafe. So that would be my go-to.
Speaking of traveling, though, is there a place you have yet to travel that you really want to go to?
Ooh. So thanks to undergraduate and graduate in geology, I've been to a lot of different parks and national parks, but not all. One of my goals is to eventually get to all the U.S. national parks, and the top one on my list right now is Acadia up in Maine. I feel like it's a good mix of forest and mountain and ocean, and so I'm actually thinking about trying to get up there later this summer when I take a little bit of vacation, especially if the pandemic's a little more on its way out. Then that's where I'm going to head.
Do you have a favorite local trail or a favorite local park?
They're all pretty good. The walk, I haven't done it in a while, but the walk out, actually it connects to the whole National Park Service Trail Network, but you can walk all the way from downtown up to the Murphy Farm, which is out I think technically in Bolivar on the other side of 340. And it's an old farm. It was part of the battle of Harpers Ferry. And you can walk to the very end of that and overlook the Shenandoah. And it's a beautiful walk, spring, fall, any time of year. And that's probably my favorite in town.
Okay. And then last one, what is your favorite album of all time?
Whoa. Oh, that's even more impossible than the movie question. Oh man. I don't know. It might be one of the Led Zeppelin albums. I'd have to check my phone to see what's most played, but probably that. It's good for on road trips. I always tend to put something like that on.
Have you been to a lot of concerts in your life?
No, not too many. So no, I can't remember. The last one was probably down in DC at one point, but it's been a while. I feel like after COVID, I can't even remember going out and doing stuff. You got to get back on track, got to get the momentum going again. So
well, you mentioned too, real quick, you mentioned a bonus question about listening to Led Zeppelin when you go somewhere. Do you have a favorite podcast?
My go-to, especially through the pandemic, I needed a few laughs, is my brother and me. It's a few guys who are originally from West Virginia, and they do like a sort of a comedy advice podcast, and it's usually hilarious, and that one's great to pass time when you're driving around. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Do you have a Facebook page or a website for the campaign or anything you want people to know about?
I don't actually. I thought about doing that and I never got around to it. I feel like it's such a small community that I've been able to just sort of go around and talk to most folks in person. I can give out my email address if that helps. I think I'm sure it'll be written down there somewhere, but it's zmorsegrad@gmail.com. I know you found it probably through the town. I think it's on file already. Other people have contacted me that way too, but hopefully getting some flyers out there later this week or next week that'll have that on there so people can feel free to contact me.
Okay. Well, this has been good. This has been fun, Zach. I thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Good luck. Good luck with the election, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for doing this. This is great. I hope to see this and the other candidates ones out there. I'm sure I can share this link around too when it gets out.
Yeah, we'll put this out next week. So
awesome.
Then the election, of course, we should say too, is June 8th, I believe. Is that
June 8th? Yep. Okay. Early voting has already begun, and I believe you can do that any day but Sunday. I have to check on that. So if you're in town and you're seeing this and you don't want to go on election day, you can still vote early.
Sounds good. Thank you again, Zach. I really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you very much.